Hello there. Little light up there suggests that I'm on the air, so I'm just going to go for it. Okay, so I listened to Hogtie's speech. Yeah, so I'm just going to go for it. Oh, normally I mute myself. Ah, dear me. Did a JDK. Okay, so a lot of what I'm going to do is kind of mirror a lot of what Hogtie was saying. And I've kind of been watching and taking part a little bit in the nonsense that's gone on recently. And I'm just, a part of me thinks, oh, what a load of bullshit this is. Another part of me is entertained by it, and another part of me is outraged. It's sort of like, oh, for crying, why? Why is this happening? Why are people being like this? And a chunk of it is the great debate community. I know some people have those, oh, the debate's all over. Doesn't really matter. We're talking about a community, the community that we're in, and the situation at hand. So, what have we got right now? So we've got GMan having a shit fit. The guy's been going over the edge, as Hogtie said. The new full GMan is, he's always at the end of the scale now. It's 100. We're now going to have to create a new percentile because, if we just make 10% full, what is now full GMan, there's bound to be some more extra that can be added on. So it's just getting quite silly. I'm rambling. This is going to be a ramble. So I've seen both TrueEmpiricsm, Ronnie's videos, and Antonio's about drawing a line, as if, now GMan's ass is getting annoyed. Now a line needs to be drawn. Now, it kind of makes me chuckle because there's a double standard there. When GMan is making video after video after video after video, having a go at Redline or Hannah or Fiona or Jade, or Spackle, or Dragnor, or even me. I mean, I don't really do much, So when he goes on and on and on about people, oh, that's okay. But when whoever these Garage Ridgeway people are, people, I have no idea. I'm not involved in any of that stuff. Okay, so now that GMan's ass is in a sling because they're giving him shit, now a line needs to be drawn. Really? Are you serious? And really it comes around the state of play, that for a long time there hasn't been a great debate. There's been effectively every week we got this show TST, and TST is what a stupid idiot person said this week. Person idiot being multiple people, and a lot of the time it's usually ends up being about GMan or about some other thing. Discussions on philosophy are few and far between. Discussions on science are few and far between. The debate isn't happening, and a part of it is this sniping shit. That Google made a change. I swear that Google stroke Hangouts are run by George Lucas. He couldn't stop pissing about with the Star Wars. Now he's taken over that, and everything needs to change every few months. And sort of at one point you had to have a second account so that your G Plus could connect with with that, and then people sort of went, oh no, this isn't right, I shouldn't have to do that. And so a year and a half later, Google say, okay, we've changed our mind on that, and now you can't even tag someone. You can't even tag someone who's been communicating with you. You have to do it by other means. You can't just I couldn't just run this Hangout and go up the top and add someone and add GMan. because it's like, okay, I'm talking about GMan. Let's invite him. No, can't find him. I can't add person Y and so on. It's just stupid. But the sniping thing, that killed the conversation because I can't leave, I can't just leave the join link under this video in the comments because someone can come in and snipe me. GMan can't do it. TrueEmpiricsm can't do it. But even then, even when it was okay, the conversation was over then. It's been gone since before sniping was the thing. And by the way, let's not forget that the sniping was started by a Christian. It was started by Isaiah, whatever his name is, Josiah McLean. And Darwin's deity is another sniper. Because, if you've got people that are making you account for your belief system and they're not just sucking it up, you need to silence them by sniping them. That's what needs to be done. Now, so I'm going to mention this Gary Widgway stuff. I'm going to mention phoning GMan's work, getting food delivered to him, things like that. Now, this is a retaliation, isn't it? It's, GMan's been a douche for so long that someone has basically snapped and said, you know what, fuck that guy. I'm just going to dick him, I'm just going to piss with him, and that'll really get on his nerves because he's been getting on everyone else's nerves and he deserves it. That's basically what they're thinking. I can understand that. I don't condone it. If you're a Gary Ridgway and you're doing this kind of thing, stop it. Okay? Stop it. It's just stupid. Before he was already full of stupid conspiracy theories. Now you're giving him a justification. Now you're giving him an actual thing, as opposed to something he's just invented out of his head, which is easily dismissed by, explaining that you're just talking out your ass, GMan. Now he's got evidence, that someone's called him and been an idiot and food's been delivered and stuff like that. I mean, he doesn't need an excuse anymore. He has a perfectly valid one. So it kind of backfires in a way, as much as, like I say, as much as he's an arsehole. And, a part of me thinks, yeah, he deserves it for being an arsehole. I don't condone it. I wouldn't do it. I'm not involved in it. I don't know anybody that is involved in it, or rather, if I know who they are, I don't know, that they're a Gary Ridgway. If I've communicated with this person or these people, because the suggestion is there might be up to a dozen of them, I don't know. I'm certainly not, like I say, not involved. I'm like Hogtie in this. I'm absolutely along the same lines as this. Don't do it. Even if you're paying for the food that's being delivered, still don't do it. And I'm reminded of something from a long time ago, and that was when I gave Jason Burns a shit in Manchester. And and it's not something I'm proud of anymore. At the time, it was like, yeah, fuck that guy. That was my attitude. And what happened, and the reason why it came around was that, he was suckered in by Richard Raspberry's lies, pointed his finger and accused Fiona of something, and a ramification happened from that. For those who know about it, I'm not going to go into it again. But, what happened was, for months, rather than accept, shit, I made a mistake. No, Jason Burns' ego couldn't accept that he was at fault for anything. It was, it's the atheists are cyberbullying me. That's what they do, And he'd created this conspiracy in his head for months and months and months. And, it's basically the final straw, and, and so what happened was he would, join some hangouts here and there, but most of the time he was just talking shit about people on the internet. he, every now and again, he would join a hangout. And in this one event, and he'd been dodging it for months. I mean, it was, I think it was like April or something like that. I can't remember when it was now. But anyway, doesn't matter. So he'd been dodging Fiona for months. You know, because at the end of the day, it's like, you told this lie and something happened as a result of it. Real world consequences happened as a result of this. You need to account for that. You know, and Fiona is right about that. Okay. But rather than, you know, than say, oh shit, you know, I made a mistake and, you know, he just doubled down on it. It's other people's fault, not mine, he says, you know, and, you know, and so on. The details aren't important. But Fiona saw him in a hangout and she went in there. And as soon as she arrived, choom, he was gone. You know, like, you know, he was like Wile E. Coyote. There was a Jason Burns hole in the wall because he had to leave at such an extent that he just smashed right through the wall. You know, a little roly-poly, you know, man-shaped hole in the wall. 5 foot nothing, you know. So I thought, right, I know where you street preach. I mean, think about it. I know where he lives. I could have gone, knocked on the door and just punched him in the face. I could have done that, but I didn't, because that's not my way. What I did was I went to Manchester and I saw him and I went, right, gotcha. Because I'd been about 3 times, he wasn't there. And, you know, and there was another time, I think it was during Christmas or something like that, a friend came to visit and, you know, he was there and it's like, well, I got a friend with me. I can't kind of confront him there. So I was in Manchester, I saw him and went, right, that's my opportunity. And I went for it. Okay. And I said, and if you watch the video, I'm here to confront you on your lies, or some words to that effect, I said. Okay. But rather than have a conversation with me, he just like, oh, you're just abusing me now. You're just abusing me. And, you know, he effectively, he started to stand up and start street preaching, pretend it didn't exist. So he could basically go, la, 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 and pretend I don't exist. And then I'd just go away, you know. Well, I did the wrong thing. I really did. I talked to some knuckle-dragging idiot on the street and told him what Jason Burns is really like. Because I thought, you know what? He wants to just sit there and do his street preaching. Well, screw that. If he's going to do his street preaching, then I will tell everybody what he's really like. Because this person that you get on the street, nice, affable, pleasant, you know, interesting. I mean, you know, his arguments are kind of rubbish, but whatever, you know, okay. The person on the street and the person behind the camera are 2 different preachers. Because if he acted, you know, it's like there's a picture out there. It's like, you know, Johnny realizes, you know, that he's not on the internet anymore. And it's basically a little kid with a much bigger kid saying, come at me, faggot, or something like that, says the little kid. And he's forgotten he's not on the internet. Because Jason Burns is a keyboard, well, at the time, he's gone away now. You hardly hear much about him unless you watch Blue Blues channel. But, you know, he was the equivalent of the keyboard warrior or the webcam warrior, you know. But out on the streets, if he behaved like he did on the internet, someone would just punch his lights out. They would. And like I say, you could argue may he deserve it if he behaved like that. You know, and the same applies to GMan. If GMan treated real people on the streets in the same way he does on the internet, then, you know, you'd expect that he'd get shot or stabbed or physically assaulted because, you know, people just have a low tolerance for bullshit like that. Again, not suggesting that he deserves to be shot or stabbed or physically assaulted. I'm saying that I can understand if someone did that. You know, because like I say, there's a difference between understanding something and saying, yes, that's acceptable. I'm saying it's not acceptable, that violence is not the way to deal with problems. It's something I've fought with, because I have a bit of a violent streak sometimes, but I control myself. I could have just turned up in Manchester and just punched him. But there's video cameras, so I could just go to his house and do it, because there's not doubtful there'll be video cameras there. Well, I could have taken that opportunity, but why did I do it? I did it. I went to a webcam so I could prove it, and like I say, it got out of hand. And I apologized to him for it. Now, Jason Burns has made it quite clear he doesn't want to speak to me in Manchester. He doesn't want to speak to me, he wants me to leave him alone. So I do. But there aren't that many of these Christian evangelicals in town, and they kind of cluster in a bang, in a group. So what I'll do is I'll talk to one of them, and I'll just sort of like shoo them aside. So I'm not getting close to Jason and, like that. I mean, I've had some really good conversations when Jason's away doing something else, because they still go there on a Saturday. So, you can have a great conversation. I spent 4 hours with one, about a month and a half ago. Fantastic. We had a fantastic conversation. We both walked away with it, shaking hands, saying, all right, take care, that kind of stuff. It was great. That's what this is what the conversation should be like, But when it gets real world stuff, sorry, I'm rambling. I went off the subject, what I was thinking. Now, I've been down there and Jason is there. And I've tried to talk, and I've tried to talk to one of them, but not Jason. I'm just let's pretend Jason doesn't exist. Yes, I know he's only 8 feet away, 10 feet, 12 feet away or whatever. But, he's asked me not to speak to him, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that to him. So what happens is I talk to another guy and I sort of, ask him that kind of thing. Next thing you know, Jason Burns is coming up saying, oh, don't talk to him because, that kind of thing. So Jason's all right going street preaching, but I can't talk to them, people that he associates with, without him trying to tell them that they're not allowed to talk to him. Well, just in case you don't know this, Blue, they think he's a dick as well at times. That when he's telling people that they shouldn't smoke or swear or anything like that, they think, oh gosh, I wish you wouldn't do this kind of thing. Well, to bring it back to the situation we got today, we now have the likes of Antonio and TrueEmpiricsm saying, "Oh, there's a line in the and we're going to boycott all these atheist things." Who cares? Who cares? You don't come on anyway. TrueEmpiricsm is not a part of the conversation. He never is. I think he came on a TST about a couple of months ago, I think it was. But they're not interested in the conversation. I'll give you a perfect example. Veckel. I was having a conversation with Sean Cahill. It was a nice conversation. I actually thought we were going to be having, a bit more of a rigorous debate about things, a conversation. But Sean was more interested in sort of getting to know me and what makes me tick, which is fine. I love talking about myself. But Veckel's in the side chat saying, oh, why aren't you holding his feet to the fire equivalent? Or, why aren't you making him justify his atheism? And I spotted this after, because I was too busy absorbed with what Sean was saying. And, I said, so I sent him a G+ message saying, hey, Veckel, you're welcome to come and challenge me on my atheism anytime you like. And I'll do an impression of how the reaction from Veckel. Okay, it sounds like this. Not a thing. Not even crickets. Not even yawn. And of course, you try to, someone tags him in it, and he's like, yawn. Oh, it's just drama. Well, now the drama's hitting GMan. And I'm sure, I don't know what Veckel's got in his mind at the moment. He's been quite quiet on this, so I'm not going to put words in his mouth. But Antonio and TrueEmpiricsm have. And, you know, I think at least Antonio is a bit more balanced on this, but Ronnie wasn't. You know, he starts off with, you know, people on both sides, and then he just atheist, 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 atheist. You know, now we don't know who this Gary Ridgway is or if who they are. I'm going to assume that he's an atheist, but and that is just so pissed off with GMan. It's like, ah, fuck that guy. You know, that's it. You know, I'm going to fight fire with fire attitude. Excuse me, I want you to drink. So it's interesting how this idea that I think it was Antonio was saying about there's a line that's been drawn now. As Hogtie said before, okay, thanks, Christopher. I didn't know that. So forgot what I was saying now. Thanks, Chris, but you distracted me. Yeah, for me, I'm mirroring like Hogtie. The line was drawn a long time ago. You know, it was, as far as I'm concerned, the line was drawn, the line was crossed when GMan said that Alex Botton and Fiona were having an affair and he had video evidence. He lied. He knew he was lying. But he didn't care because he needed to lash out at them. You know, and pretty much ever since then, I've just been calling the guy a jerk. You know, I made a video about a week ago or so ago, you know, where I used his real name and I did it just to piss him off because I know he doesn't like it. I know he doesn't like it. And of course, gosh, I'm starting to sound like Blue there. The hypocrisy. GMan was saying last week how the atheists, they don't have their cameras on and that, you know, and they don't use their name. It's like, really? They don't use their name. GMan is allergic to people using his name. It's not dog dropping. It's not because he gave out his name. He gave out his work address. You know, you only need 5 seconds on Google to figure out, you know, you can figure out from his videos of him walking the street that, you know, he's in Arlington Park. It's really easy. And of course, he says, oh, you know, he phoned up the Atheist Experience and said Arlington. So he's given out this information. Nobody had to spy on him to figure this out. He gave this information out. Now, I know someone in America who is one of these evangelical types, and they'll go around, you know, effectively annoying people, but they're sloppy with their ID, so they've been doc dropped, you know, and then they blamed other people. They said, oh, you know, so-and-so doc dropped me, kind of thing, despite them being sloppy with their identity. And as Hogtie said, you know, the internet, you can annoy people, you know, that it only takes, you know, 1 in 10,000, I think the number he gave, you know, people out there, you know, and you just say something controversial enough that someone will, you know, go on the internet and do some searching, and next thing you know, they figured out who they are. You know, Hogtie makes it very clear that he, you know, doesn't want his real life to be affected by his internet stuff. I largely do the same thing. The people I trust, they know my name, they know my surname. You know, it's out there in other places as well. But whatever, you know. Now, at the end of the day, the conversation is over. It really is over. This line in the sand that Antonio and TrueEmpiricsm have drawn, they don't come in the hangouts anyway. TrueEmpiricsm, he has a whole series of hangouts called Bring It Evolutionists. And it's like, why does he even bother having these hangouts? Because, you know, you look at the names, all the evolutionists who can bring it are blocked. They're blocked. You know, Sam the Scientist, Fiona, CRISPR, Hogtie, Jackson Wheat, a fairly new guy. You know, Dragnot. Well, Dragnot's a provocateur anyway, so I can understand why they might not want to talk to him. But, you know, there are loads of people in this community that have an interest in, you know, the biology, stuff. And they know their shit. Whereas it's quite clear. I mean, I really don't know biology. But isn't it interesting how I could get in there? Because I said, no, I don't know these things. But he'll have me there because he knows that, you know, I don't know the subject well enough. What he fails to understand is I've got a nose for bullshit. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's like I have an incredibly good bogusometer. You know, when something just sounds wrong, it's like, hang on. Now, jargon, I don't understand the little details. You know, I'm a details person. And if I wanted to know, I would. You know, I've thought about going back to college just so I can learn biology, just so I can keep up in the conversations. The sad thing is, there aren't really any conversations on the biology stuff anymore. You know, so I really enjoyed taking part in the Science Bitches hangouts. You know, I really, really did, because I would learn things and I would ask questions that, you know, because as a layman, you know, I want to be able to understand these things because I think they're important. So I would be, you know, we'd have people who really do know the subject. You know, RSC, for example, Dog Savage. They'd be in there and they'd be explaining something, and it was like, okay, can I just back you up a second, just ask this question, you know, and it just gets me back on the track. You know, I'm the same with the philosophy stuff. I didn't know anything about philosophy until I joined this community. Not a thing. I mean, you know, I got a brain that thinks about things. You know, I used to go and visit a friend who used to live upstairs, and we'd have these discussions, and you know, into the night. And you know, one of the things that I used to say is, you know, consequence was a sort of idea of it. You know, that you do something and there's a consequence to it, and you learn something from that, and then you know you progress, learn it. Well, that's consequentialism. So you know, I was doing philosophy, but didn't realize I was doing it. But when I joined, the whole precept stuff was in there, and you know, all the subjects were about philosophy, and sadly, I don't see enough of those anymore. So they've kind of dried up. But if, like I say, you look, Ronnie makes all these videos about Bring It Evolutionist, and all the evolutionists that can bring it are blocked. Why are they blocked? Because they can embarrass him. Because he's not interested in the conversation. He only wants to protect his belief system. He wants to play the guru because, you know, you listen to GMan, it also go through these list of arguments that are really good for Christianity and they use intelligent design. GMan doesn't understand the argument for intelligent design at all. I mean, you know, do you remember that? I posted it to Kevin because, you know, it's on the soundboard. Let me find it. And it just this just incomprehensible question that he asked me about whether a flower was intelligently made. And it's like, what? You know, and you can hear, if you watch that video, it's out there. Here we go. This is it.
Explain to me how you being an intelligent person, you can't make something that is unintelligently, something that was made unintelligent. That's an argument from intelligent design.
No, it's not. It's an argument from gibberish. Okay. I think what he was trying to do is say, how can you, as an intelligent person, you know, intelligently make something? You know, that was basically it. You know, can you make a flower? Can you put all the DNA bits together and make a flower? I think that's what he was trying to ask. What he actually did was talk a load of nonsense. And then I said, sorry, that makes no sense. And he's like, right, as if he'd made a point. No, he just confused me. It's like, what on earth was that? That wasn't a question. That was words coming out of his mouth which he didn't understand because he doesn't understand what intelligent design is. And to be frank, I don't think Ronnie understands what intelligent design is either. Intelligent design, the way that Ronnie seems to describe it, is it's an argument from incredulity and an argument from um, uh, ignorance thrown together. It's basically, I can't imagine how something could, everything we see has a designer. This pen was designed, the computer was designed, my keyboard was designed, etc., etc., etc. We have evidence for those. So therefore, there must be a designer that designed DNA and universes and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's a great assertion. Please demonstrate that that's true. It's an assertion, but it's I don't understand stuff, therefore God, right? Or an intelligent designer. But of course, he really means Jesus. Well, how do you get from intelligent designer to Jesus? We don't know, because he never gets that far. Because what he does is he just rambles incoherently about ATP synthase, and it's gibberish, and of course he'll, every now and again he'll pop up and say that how he defeated Sam the scientist because he was rambling on about something, and Sam the scientist, basically got the motor upside down. He thought he was talking about the other end, not that end, and he got some little thing wrong. He knew what he was talking about, but like I say, he was having to filter through the inner solipsism of solipsism. Now I want now I have to point out, I got a bit of a confession here. If you see me in a GMan hangout, you can be pretty sure I'm kind of trolling him. Although I would like to have the conversation, I know I'm not going to get one. I enjoy having conversations with people. My whole reason for being in this community is because I met Jason Burns on the street, and I'd never come across these radical evangelical types, because in the UK, thanks to several hundred years worth of Catholics versus Protestants trying to kill each other, largely over control of the throne and turf, especially in Northern Ireland. Bear in mind that my parents were in the Air Force, and someone left a bomb outside my best friend's home. Some guys go off to a mall when we were living in Germany, and they get, and they come back to their car, they turn the ignition, and it goes boom, because the IRA put a bomb under them. And two of those people worked in my dad's hangar, worked where my dad works. It could have been us, okay? Because when I was when my family were in the Air Force, when we lived in Germany, we had British Forces number plates, which are the opposite of what they are here. So instead of being white with black lettering on, they were black with white lettering on. They were special, and they pointed you out as being armed forces personnel in Germany. Okay, so we basically had a bullseye on our car. So we could have gone into the mall. We get in the car, my dad turns the ignition, and no more cliff jumper. Okay? Could have been killed as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, that kind of age. Okay? So I went through that kind of bullshit. That's the kind of nonsense that religion brings. Okay? I mean, basically they were using religion as the justification to be shitty to one another. That's basically Northern Ireland for you. Okay? And although they may not be, fighting it out full on anymore, there are still elements of the IRA out there, but there's still a lot of sectarian bad feeling going on. And back in 2001, when 9/11 happened, there was a day where they were quiet. But that day was throughout a week, couple of weeks, of a bunch of children. We're talking primary school children here, sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 kind of an age, little kids who were having pipe bombs thrown at them because they dared to walk through down a street that was controlled by the other group they didn't like. That was it. Some kids and their parents were walking to school. That's the bullshit that religion has. So as a result of that, in the UK, we don't really wear religion on our sleeve so much. In fact, if anything, it's kind of uncouth to do so. That if you believe, fine. If you don't believe, fine. As long as you're not an arsehole in people's faces about it, most people just don't give a shit. So that's the way that we conduct ourselves. Well, in America, it's different because, it's much more of it's a marketplace. The nice little church down the street, only has 30 people turning up at it, whereas the screaming, bigot, just berating about homosexuals and all that kind of stuff, they get the big audiences because they're a lot more entertaining. And there are some people that are just bigoted as well, so they suck in the bigots, and it's just a marketplace. And if you notice, you look at the amount of people, the believers in the UK. So the people, the people in this community are from the UK. Even the believers are not in your face. Richard Raspberry and Jason Burns are about the biggest ones I can remember. Everybody else is pretty mild, that they have a belief, and if you talk to them, they'll explain it. But they don't need to ram it down your throat to try and make you repent or try to make you believe what they believe. Effectively, they want to share their belief, not try and force feed it you. And when we hear GMan saying, and Veckel and Antonio and what's it, when they're all saying that, oh, Fiona, she never preaches the gospel. Well, yes, she does. Yes, she does. Not only does she do it, I have told Veckel that she does this. I have told other people that she does this. Fiona has told them that they do it, that she's done it. There are videos on her channel with her doing it. There are videos there's a video on her channel, the Stations of the Cross, where I'm in it. So to say that she doesn't do this is bullshit. Her interests are more in the biology stuff, and the reason why I'm not trying to put words in Fiona's mouth, but her interest is in biology, and she said something along the lines of, she's not a trained theologian, preacher, whatever, and she wouldn't want to damage someone's faith by getting it wrong. She basically is being honest and saying, look, I'm not qualified to do that because I would hate to, lead someone up the wrong narrow path, if that makes sense. So, I think that's an honest position to have. One of the most wonderful conversations I had in the last 6 months was on Holy Speckle's channel, and it was Fiona, Jade and Speckle, and I don't remember if Fiona was there. I'm not sure she was, but Gretchen, people were basically sharing their faith, because I don't have this faith. I don't, as I said before, the reason why I'm here is because, I don't believe this stuff. Why do you? That's the question I want to know. And so to have people sharing this with them, why they believe, why this works for them, is nice. I like to hear that. I like the idea of people believing things, even if I don't think they've got a good justification for it. If I think that, I may not think that the justification is valid, but I think as long as they feel they've got a justification and that works for them, brilliant. I've used the I've used the line that a justification for believing in God is my parents stroke pastor told me it was true, and they wouldn't lie to me, would they? Well, that's a really crappy reason to believe, but it is a justification. So, now, if you were to sort of ask them, okay, well, let's walk through this, you would find that maybe their justification for believing is a bit stronger than just that. Have they read the Bible? I found quite a lot of Christians who haven't actually read the Bible, which I find worrying. I'm an atheist. I've read it 5 times. It's at least 4, probably 5. You know, I know chunks in there. You know, I may not remember every single bit and every single story, but I remember, you know, some of the big important ones. You know, I know the general theme, you know, and not only that, I mean, it's not like I haven't been to a church before, you know, but I've never been a believer. For those who don't already know this about me, you know, when I was a kid, we were in the Air Force, and you, when it's in the Air Force, you've got people from all walks of life. All, you know, you've got everything from officers and gentlemen to, you know, basically people from slum towns. You've got a whole demographic of people, and so you can't. And but it's not just social demographics, but also religious demographics, because you would have people that are Protestants, some that are Catholics, some that are Baptists, some that are, you know, Presbyterians. You know, you're going to have a whole range of people. Awful lot of Scottish people in the military. You know, and I think if I remember correctly, Presbyterian is more popular in north of the border. So you have a whole range of people. So as a result, you can't have a Protestant specific or a Catholic specific, you know, religious ceremony. And in the UK, I don't know if it's completely like this now, but in the UK, the law was basically that you have to have some kind of religious service in the morning. So what would happen was in the morning I would get up, you know, my mum would wake me up or whatever. So I'd wake up and I'd, you know, go down and have my breakfast, and I'd put my clothes on, you know, my school clothes on, and I'd get my coat and my bag and I'd walk to school, or my mum would take me to school or whatever. Usually I walked, because when you're in the military, you live on a base. It's quite a enclosed system, you know, there. And so it's quite safe. The streets aren't like busy and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so what would happen is I'd walk to school and you'd play in the yard with your friends or whatever for a little while. And then, you know, the whistle would go or the bell would ring, and people, you'd all line up, you know, where your class is, and then you would go into assembly. And, you know, you might sit on the floor or have chairs, but it would be in like in the assembly space, you know. So sometimes you'd have, you know, play on there or something like that, whatever. So and the headmaster, he would stand up in front of the school, and he would talk about, you know, what was going on in the school, like, you know, don't go down a certain corridor because they're painting it. That's out, you know, stay out of that area, please. You know, no more running in the corridors. You know, stop drawing stuff on the cubicles in the toilet, things like that, you know. And but you know, you'd sing a prayer and you'd say a hymn, and then you would go to class. And for me, the religion thing didn't matter to me, you know. Singing prayers and saying prayers and singing hymns was no different than putting on my clothes or walking to school. It was just one of the things on the list of things you did between the getting up and the, you know, reading, writing, and arithmetic stuff. And so, you know, I didn't know I had Asperger's then. I do now, but I was a kind of an inattentive child. And so I was one morning, I was quietly whispering to one of my friends who was sat next to me. And basically we got caught, and a teacher tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "This is important. You need to pay attention." And so it's like, okay, let's have a look then. Right, the Bible. Okay, let's have a look at the Bible. Okay. I was 8 years old. Now, don't dismiss this as a sort of like, oh, he's 8 years old. How is he able to process something like the Bible? You'd be surprised. Okay. I was reading books for 12, 13-year-olds at the time. You know, I was quite ahead of my years. So, and it's like, okay, this doesn't make sense. This is not real world. This is fiction. You know, talking animals don't talk. That's cartoons. That's not real. You know, my dog never talked. Walking on water, well, I like splashing in puddles. That wasn't very realistic either. You know, healing people by touching them. Well, if I was sick, you know, my mum would take me down to the medical center, and, you know, the doctor would like take my temperature or look in my ear or look in my eyes and feel my head and, you know, whatever. and it'd be like, okay, they'd figure out what was wrong with you, take these pills, rub this ointment on the rash that you've got, and you'll get better. I did those things, I got better. So that was real. You know, he didn't come along and sort of say a prayer and touch my head and I got better. No, that wasn't real. So fiction. So mentally it went on the fiction shelf. And over the years I've read it several times because, you know, things have come up in, you know, it's like, okay, what's this thing about? Okay, let's have a look. You examine it. I've read it, like I say, I've read it at least 4 times, probably 5 over the years. And every time I read it, I get more red flags. That's the way it is for me. And, you know, whatever. If it works for you, great. But, you know, I'm rambling. I apologize. So, yeah, like I say, the sniping killed the conversation because you can't just post a link out there. Someone will come along just to be a dick. Unfortunately, it's like that. That's the internet for you. I wish that sniping, you know, being able to boot someone, you know, boot the host of a hangout was impossible. If only we could get that back, I would be a very happy person. You know, but the whole stuff that's going on with GMan stuff, isn't it interesting how I wonder, maybe he should try praying. Maybe his answered prayer argument might work. Oh, wait a minute. You know, because the irony of it is that it's Galatians. I think it's Galatians. It's the one about you reap what you sow. GMan is now getting the fruits of his labor. The arseholishness that he has been sowing for years is now turning into fruit, and it's pretty bad fruit. It stinks, you know. And the same applies to Ronnie, you know, because honestly, that guy, his ego is so fragile. He is like you know, a seriously overripe peach, you know, that all it takes is any tiny little bit of prodding and his ego is so bruised that hangout has to go. It's got to go. It's got to be deleted because he got embarrassed. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, you know, what he believes. It's about protecting what he believes. He needs it to be true so much that he will fight to protect it and he will be dishonest to protect it. That's the way it works. You know, this is how these evangelicals seem to operate. You know, and I've seen it. I can see it. You know, I've used Veckel as an example. You know, all these atheists, that kind of thing. You know, but they're all pretty much like it. You know, they don't seem to understand that it's the feedback. You know, that they have a bad argument and, you know, they're told, no, that's a really bad argument, you know. And I can understand how this happens. I really can. I mean, if you think of think about what it's like for the believer, okay? So what happens is they've read the Bible and it says, you know, you only have to preach the gospel and people will believe. And so, you know, okay, well, you know, I've read Mark 16 and it says, you know, about the Great Commission that you need to preach the gospel. You know, of course, you know, Jade would, you know, occasionally say, you know, I think it was St. Francis, you know, preach the gospel always and sometimes use words. Effectively, it's be a Christian is that was her idea behind it, you know. It's somewhat a bit like John in a way, because if you read the Bible, John's mentality towards it wasn't a physical resurrection, it was a spiritual one. So effectively, Jade's, you know, way of describing it was very much a spiritual gospel preaching. You know, be a nice person, be an honest person, be a forthright person, and, you know, you will project that form of Christianity. That I can appreciate, you know. But when we compare what Jade was like and what we compare GMan, you know, GMan uses the Bible as a weapon. It is a tool to beat people with. You know, there's let's see if I can find it, because I've got this funny little cartoon. And it's let's see. I got so many of these little meme type things. But it's the sort of poor persecuted Christian kind of thing. Come on, where are I? There's a lot of files. Oh, where are I? Hope I didn't skim past it. Oh, here we go. There's, well, you remember I told you about that picture about, you know, tough guy in the internet? There you go. That's the one I was referring to earlier. You know, but anyway, it's not that one. I did miss it. Ah, there it is. There you go. This one. I don't like your kind. You know why? Only a little bit called the Bible. You're evil. God hates you. I hate you. You don't deserve rights. Does this sound like G-Men to me? And then when the atheist goes, stop that. Oh, I'm a victim of oppression. I mean, this is G-Man all over. You know, like I say, he uses the Bible as a weapon, as a tool to attack people. And it doesn't matter whether they're an atheist or a Christian that he disagrees with. You know, oh, you're a Catholic, therefore you're wrong, and you pray to Mary and all that, you know, whatever. Despite it doesn't matter how many times they get told that that isn't the case, you know, but whatever. You know, it doesn't matter, because they've already decided what the truth is there, and so nothing they say will make them change their mind, because, you know, they're just bigoted. They stuck in that mentality, and, you know, they don't want it to be true, because this is the reality. It's not about what is true, it's what they want to be true. It's what they want to be the case. Now, so I was kind of giving the example of the evangelical. So what happens is they come on the internet, they, you know, it says preach the gospel and people will believe. So they want to do the Great Commission because they want to be a Christian, you know, they want to do the right thing from their faith position. And so what happens is they go, well, you know, I could go on the street and hand some pamphlets out and, you know, speak to some people, you know, that'd be fun. That'll be all right. But not going to get through to many people. Most people won't be interested. You know, they might try it and people just walk by because they're too busy. They're, you know, too busy looking at their phones, too busy interested in their lives, you know, too busy wanting to go and, you know, do the groceries or whatever. So they really don't want to do that. You know, they haven't got time to worry about this preacher guy on the street. Just not interested, you know. They already believe anyway, so it's like, what do they need saving from, you know? Because most people in America are, you know, believers, right? So, so what goes on next is, you know, I know. Well, you know, I could go and hand out some pamphlets. I could go out with a bullhorn and be, you know, that's a little bit arrogant, isn't it? It's a bit, you know, it's the kind of thing that some idiot would do, really, isn't it? So I know I can go on the internet. I don't even have to leave my home. I could have an audience of hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people. I could preach the gospel to loads of people. My own little ministry, a one-man ministry. I mean, in G-Man cases, one moron ministry. So they, you know, so they go on the internet, and, you know, I remember Jason Burns making a video when I first came across the guy, and, you know, because I realized he's, you know, just a lunatic when he was, you know, this is when he was at his worst, really. You know, anybody who said, no, I disagree with you, that was cyberbullying. I mean, it was that stupid. So he made a video, and he was basically saying that you know, the people on the streets that he meets in Manchester, they're nice, you know, they're atheists and they don't treat you horribly and things like that. And, you know, he would, you know, but the ones on the internet, they're awful, they're horrible people. Well, the people on the streets aren't interested in the topic. You know, it's like if you're interested in motor racing, you don't want to go on the streets and talk to strangers about motor racing. You want to go to a racetrack because that's where you'll find people that are interested in motor racing. If you're interested in motor racing, all you have to do is type Formula One and boom, there's video. Loads of them. Okay? People who are interested in the subject can find what they want because they type in something in a search bar and they find it. So the people in this community who are interested in the discussion, that's why they're there, because they typed it in and it's like, oh, there's this discussion to be had, and here I am now. Okay? So the people on the internet understand the arguments and they realize why, from their perspective, they think they're nonsense. And they'll say so. Well, you know, if you imagine you're the hypothetical preacher I'm talking about, would-be preacher, he comes on the internet, thinks, I'll just preach the gospel there. So what happens is they preach something and they get told, they have the comment underneath and it says, sorry, no, that's a really bad argument and here's why. And then you'll get, then they'll make another argument and they'll be told, sorry, no, science says no. And then they'll make another argument, no, philosophy, says no, that's a really bad argument and here's why. And of course, you'll have a combination of stuff. You'll have the combination of, the John F. Muck dropouts of the world who say, okay, I understand what you're trying to say, but here's the problem with your argument. And he goes through it, methodologically and, nicely. It's very civil. And then you'll get then you'll get another big group of people who are like, oh, that's a really stupid argument. You're an idiot kind of thing. And then you get the complete arseholes that are, you're a fucking retard. GMan has had the same thing. He's had comments underneath, and I've made some myself, giving, okay, that's a really bad argument. Here's why. Then you get sort of mid-range ones. Oh, you're such a moron. What a stupid argument. And, and then you'll just get the complete assholes out there who say, you stupid ass nigger. Apologies for using the word. I'm kind of repeating, and of course, what does GMan do? He seizes on that word and says, an atheist did that, therefore, Hogtie Champ is a racist. Cliff Jumper is a racist. Jackie Kite is a racist. Because some other person, and this is exactly what's gone on right now with this Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway has lost his patience and thought, fuck you, guy, fuck you, arsehole. I'm going to fight fire with fire. You've been an arsehole. I'm going to be an arsehole back. And now what we've got is GMan saying that Hogtie Champ, or, Dragnaught is doing this. And he's got evidence? Wait a second. Dragnaught is responding to a jackass on the internet. And not only that, he can't be Gary Ridgway because he was literally on air at the time that this Gary Ridgway was supposedly phoning up his work or something. It's it's stupid beyond belief. But of course, if I have someone who gives me crap on the internet, a Christian that gives me crap, I'm not going to blame GMan for it. I'm not going to blame Veckel for it because someone we know, none of us know, is like that. I also want to mention another thing. I said something on TST and Dragnaughts Hangout, I think, as well, saying that, and it sounded a bit racist, and I'm not a racist person. I'm an egalitarian. And what I've said is that GMan hates Dragnaught, and a part of the reason for it, and Spoken's the same with this, and I think a part of it is because he's a black man. You listen at how Spoken's been like, oh, you're not a real man kind of stuff, and there's a kind of black thing that goes on with oh, you're real man. This is what a real man is. And, it's an ego thing. I don't really understand it. But anyway, whatever. But what I'm trying to explain on this is if you look, the Black Hebrew Israelites are really bad for this. They have, and there was also another guy, and I can't. It was the Son of Man thing years ago. He smacked his kid live on air, and just a bunch of people had a look at that guy for a little while. Yeah, this is a few years ago. Alex Bottom was still around at the time, and so what happened was, the guy was basically talking about slavery and how the white man are keeping black people down, and the Black Hebrew Israelites do the same thing. And we've heard GMan and other people say similar things, to be the black evangelicals, And the thing about it is that it's an excuse. What is Dreadnought doing? He's gone and served his country. He went through a shitty time thanks to Hurricane Katrina. His life was ripped out from under him. And he's basically said, well, I could just lie here in the gutter and feel sorry for myself. Or I could just, pick myself and, and say, right, I'm going to do something in my life. I'm not going to let the system drag me down. I'm going to make something. I'm going to make something in my life. So what he does is he goes and joins the military, and a part of the reason for that is so that he can put himself through college, because that's one of the things that many people join the services for, because they can't really afford a college education because it's very expensive. And so what they do is they work hard and they serve their country, and as well as being paid, a part of the reward of that is that they get to go to college. And so they're able to basically, move themselves up the ladder. For some people, the Donald Trumps of the world, whatever, parents were rich and, they basically have enough money to put their kids through university or even bribe the school in order to make sure they get a good, get a degree, even if they're a bit of a waster, really. But so, they already have they're already several steps up that ladder before they're even born. They're already halfway up that ladder. Okay. And then you got people at the bottom who have, they have to find a way out of that. And so, what happens is Dreadnought has basically said, screw that. I'm going to go, and now he's going through, university, he's going through college, and his goal is to, study biology and, all that kind of stuff. And he wants to be a cancer, a biologist that cures cancer. I mean, that's what his goal is. How awesome is that? He is effectively saying, I'm not going to let anybody hold me back. I'm not going to let the system hold me back. Whereas the Black Hebrew Israelites, G-Man, spoken, whatever, G-Man especially, wants to put Dreadnought down. And why? Because it's so much easier to just sit there and point the finger at someone else and try to make them feel bad than actually do something. I mean, it's kind of an example was I had a bit of an upset yesterday. I got some new scales and I stood on them and I discovered that I weighed a lot more than I thought I did. I thought I was sort of on the boundary of overweight into a bit, on the boundary of overweight and obese. So I'm a bit fat on the belly. And I discovered that I'm 20 stone. I thought I was 17. So I thought I was 238 pounds. And I've discovered that I'm a fucking fat bastard. Okay. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like the equivalent of someone getting, getting lung cancer. They've been smoking a long time. I have agoraphobia. I don't go out much. I sit here and I eat, and I don't get a lot of exercise. Most of my exercise has been going to the toilet or going to the fridge. It's a really shitty thing, and I've basically been making myself fat. Now, what can I do about that? I've got two choices. I can just sit on my ass and just accept it and say, well, yeah, nothing you can do about it, really. Just, I'll have to just sit here and maybe blame the food manufacturers and say, well, it's because they're putting too much sugar in the food and stuff like that, rather than say, hang on, you've got a food mouth interface problem, as in you're putting too much food in your mouth. Okay, I need to get some exercise. So one of my friends on Twitter gave me something called a turbo trainer. It's like an A-frame thing that you put your bike wheel on, and it's got a little thing that goes on your wheels so that when you ride, it's got, so effectively I can ride my bike from home. I can get some exercise. I don't have to go out, which is the agoraphobia problem. So I could just sit here and do nothing and just, accept it and, look in the mirror and think, oh, well. Or I could do something about it. I could basically say, I don't want to be a fat person. I want to, do better for myself than that. And this is going to be a hard thing to say, but Jay didn't go on the camera very much. And when she died, someone posted a video with her talking with Agent of Doubt. And I didn't realize how big she was. She's quite a large lady. Now, if you've spoken to her enough, you'll have known that she had arthritis, which can, make it very difficult for someone to lose weight. They can't, physically do a lot of work because it hurts. So, it's unfortunate that she probably wasn't able to do something, but she basically died young. Maybe it was because it was a weight problem. Well, I don't want that to be me. I don't want to die young because, for something that's preventable. I'm at an age that I can still do something about it. I haven't got arthritis. I haven't got an excuse for not doing it. So I'm going to try and do something about that. So it's and it's the same mentality. Dragnor is saying, yeah. Now, what's the equivalent of what GMan has been doing? Imagine it to imagine him trying to find something to attack me for being fat. Well, I can do something about not being fat. GMan can't do anything. It doesn't seem to be able to do anything about not being a douche. But what it requires is to use my brain. I've got to basically get it into my head and say, okay, I need to stop eating shitty food. And I don't have a terribly bad diet. The problem is I'm eating too much. I eat fruit. I eat veg. I eat salad. I drink too much soda, and I bought some soda before I weighed myself. And it's like, okay, I'm having this soda. I've got some bottles. And once that's gone, I'm not doing soda anymore. And now I'm going to take a drink because I'm thirsty and I'm going to drink soda. I mean, I'm sorry, it's terrible. Now, yes, I've just said I need to stop having soda and then taking a drink of soda. Okay. But I've just said a moment ago, I just said that what am I going to do about it? I'm going to not buy soda. I remember reading a book about toddlers. And sort of in it was like toddler training or whatever it was, and and there was a comical one about children that bite. Little Johnny didn't sort of get it into his head and say, you know what, I'm going to go and bite my friend. It tends to be an impulse reaction. Now, but one of the other ones was, my kid will only eat chips, will only eat fries. My kid will only eat chocolate. Like, does your child get the Volvo, get the keys to the Volvo, drive to the supermarket and buy the chips and fries, and crisps and and chocolate? No, you buy those things for the child. Stop buying that for the child, and they can't eat it. So if your kids getting fat, stop buying them fat shit. I remember where I used to work on the market, And I remember a mum saying, "If you don't behave, I won't take you to McDonald's." You know, they basically took the kid to McDonald's for dinner. That kid is going to be was a fat kid. You know, whose fault is it? Now, there is an element of the industry that's to blame for this kind of fat epidemic because, you know, when I was a kid, you know, they generally use good ingredients, but unfortunately, pricing has meant that, you know, if you've got two cans of beans or something and one of them's not as good, you know, one of them's got artificial stuff in it and the other one's a healthier version, but this one's 5 pence cheaper than that one, people will buy the cheaper one. And so that's allowed a kind of decline. So, you know, and we're also not as active as we used to be. So there are issues behind it. But, you know, I'm rambling again, I'm sorry. So the great debate community as I see it. So what have we got? We got the people who come on the internet and, you know, they say, I'm going to go and preach the gospel to everybody. And they get told, sorry, no, sorry, no, sorry, no. And it's like, they get upset. You know, I mean, this is what Jason Burns did, you know, got upset. It's like, well, you know, I thought you could just come and preach the gospel. I believe it because of the gospel. Why don't you? You should all believe it because, you know, it's true. I got told it was true when I went, you know, when I read the Bible and when my pastor told me and things like that. Well, he's preaching to the converted. The people who are in this community, the atheists in this community, most of them believed and they don't believe now. And the arguments that the Christian might believe, they stopped believing it. They went, hang on, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't work for me anymore. And so they stopped believing. Now, you know, this isn't a slight against, you know, the less fundamentalist Christians, you know, the arsehole people. You know, but the people, you know, for example, let's say I was in a hangout with Fiona and I explained that I thought her religious basis was not very good. You know, what kind of reaction she would be like? Well, she might be a little bit gruff with me because, you know, her back's to the wall a bit, and we all kind of do that, you know. But I don't think that she would be horrible with it. She wouldn't, you know, take it incredibly personally, you know, unless I was an arsehole with her. You know, if we were having, you know, it's like, okay, let's compare your system, my system. Let's have an interesting conversation about it, and we're pleasant and kind. You know, I had that conversation with Sean Cahill. It was pleasant and it was kind. It was very nice. You know, I'd like to have another conversation with him. You know, so I can sort of challenge him a little bit more. But you know, whatever. It would still be a polite conversation. You know, I've had a polite conversation with Christian anarchists. You know, with Max. You know, Epi, the Catholics fusionist. You know, we've had some really great conversations. I consider him a good friend. Okay. Even though he does like the Patriots, I still think, you know, I can still consider him a good friend. Okay. And the same applies to Gretchen and Spackle, you know, these are people I like to share time with, you know. Sometimes it's to compare our faith. A lot of time it's just to bitch about idiots on the internet. But, you know, or talk about other things, you know, talk about, you know, what we like about art or, you know, something like that. It's, you know, it's interesting to talk to people about, you know, because circle jerks are kind of boring. You know, after a while, everything's got said. And so you want to start looking at other things. Now, this can be fraught with problems. You know, I'm a member of Model Railway group, and there have been clashes of personalities there, because what happens is you talk about train stuff, or atheism versus theism stuff, and that's fine. You might have a bunch of people that you're friends with because you talk about atheism stuff, but as the conversation dries up, you start talking about politics or economics or something like that, and next thing you know, you have a big disagreement, because when it comes down to it, the only thing you've got in common with each other is that you don't believe in God, or you like model trains, or whatever. When it comes down to it, when it comes to policies and politics and social economic situations, you are distant. Those things you won't ever see eye to eye with, and so as a result, that's where you end up with the fractures, that people who were friends suddenly aren't anymore. So, like I say, this is life. This is what happens. But in this community, the fundy comes along and wants to preach the gospel, and he's told no, 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 and he loses his patience. He gets annoyed. He gets angry, because it's like, well, you should be believing. I'm preaching the gospel. Why aren't you believing this stuff? How dare you not just believe stuff? Because they're not convinced by your argument. That's why. And so that frustration turns into animosity, and now we've got the hate. Because as much, if you really think about it, they may not use the word hate, but GMan hates atheists. He hates them. He hates Catholics. His every bodily and wordly, projection is hate. As I said before, he uses the Bible as a weapon. He's not using it to bless, he's not using it as positive energy. He's not trying to say, look at this loving stuff that Jesus says. No, I'm going to go to the bit of Paul so I can smack you over the head with it. I mean, one of my most amusing images is where, it's in the Fiona hangout with the bullhorn one, right? Where should we shove the bullhorn? And, just before he's like, show me the evidence kind of thing, he's holding up his Bible and he's like, he's coveting it. He's coveting the Bible. The irony of it, read your Bible and do what it says. Well, you shall not, covet. But he covets the Bible. He uses it as a tool. It's not a tool to preach the love of Jesus. It's the tool that he can use, okay, I need to find, ironically, he uses the Bible in the same way I do. Okay? Because I don't believe this stuff, and it's like, so I'll see a verse and I'll go, wait a second. And so my head makes an argument sort of based upon that. I sort of say, well, hang on. If you read Genesis in, God basically created Adam and Eve. He created the universe. He created the garden. He created, he created the tree of knowledge. He created fruit that must not be eaten. He gave them free will. He created the serpent. He allowed the serpent to speak. And when you put that all together, the only real logical conclusion is he wanted sin. He intended for sin to enter the world. There's two choices here. Okay. Option number one is he wanted sin to enter the world, and yet doesn't want sin. That doesn't make sense. Or two, he's not omniscient and he didn't know what the hell he was doing, which then unravels another part of the Bible. So, like I say, I read something like that and my head starts making an argument, say, well, hang on. When you put all these, when you take the scales, the balance, and you say, well, hang on, when you put that one and that one and that one, suddenly the whole thing's weighted in the wrong direction. It doesn't have the balance that, supposedly is supposed to exist within the Bible. It makes no sense. or rather, it does make sense, but it's not the sense that the Christians want to believe. You know, because then then you've got Jesus has to come to forgive people for the sins, but hang on, God wanted the sin in the first place, and Jesus is, it just, I should make a video on this of itself. So, I read the Bible and I see these things and I end up sort of wanting to get a red marker and say, right, okay, wow. And I formulate an argument. GMan does exactly the same thing. I need to go after the atheists. What can I find to go after the atheists? Let's see, and he looks and he finds a verse that he can use as a tool so he can attack someone with. Again, he's not trying to use the Bible to preach the love of Jesus. He's not trying to show goodness out of it. He's not trying to show wholesomeness of the Christian position. He's trying to basically use it as a weapon to beat people with. And whether it's atheists or Catholics or whatever Christian he doesn't like this week, or whether it's the Black Hebrew Israelites or, whoever, he literally uses it to do those things. That's the whole point, So, like I say, at the end of the day, what GMan has gone through is Galatians. He has reaped what he sowed. He sowed evil, and he's got negative shit that's impacted his life. But who could have foreseen that when you go and boast on the internet about how well you did in a marathon and told people what your name is, and then got pissy later on when someone used your name, because he needed to attack them, and now he'll relabel what dog dropping is so that he can say, because, you're only doing this because I'm a Christian. No, people are doing it because you're an asshole. That's it. Seriously. If I only attack GMan because he's a Christian, how is it that I'm friends with Fiona and Spackle and the Catholic Fusionists and Gretchen and Jade when she was still around? How is it that I'm friends with them, and I don't believe what they believe? Surely, if I was like that, I would have been attacking them. But that's not the reality. And if you look within the community, by and large, people aren't attacking them. So the conclusion is it's not because GMan is a Christian. And it's not because Veckel and Antonio and TrueEmpiricsm. It's because they are being assholes. I mean, one of the most interesting characters I've found in this community is Shani. A part of me likes Shani. I don't trust Shani. I can't trust Shani. She understands why. I gave her my love. I tried to, be nice. And she basically went, screw that. I would rather side with GMan and his lies than the people that are actually telling the truth and can justify the position. Okay? He threw Hillary and I to the she threw Hillary and I to the to the wind because she wanted to side with them, because Shani goes through this weird cycle, because unlike GMan, and Veckel is like Shani as well at times, but Shani has a conscience. She reads the Bible and she understands these things, Shani's main problem is that, she posts everything about her life on the internet and, kind of gets, rather emotional about things, which brings negative attention. She gets upset by that, but whatever, okay? But Shani goes through this cycle where what will happen is she'll be all friends with, the clown car posse, and then GMan or whoever will just say something that's completely wrong. That it's not a Christian thing to do. She understands what is the Christian thing to do. And so she'll sort of say, guys, that's really not on. You really shouldn't be doing things like that. And the reaction is, how dare you contradict me? How dare you say that what I'm doing isn't, and then they'll, grab a Bible verse to justify why she shouldn't be doing that because she's a woman, or because, because she should have gone to them privately. And let's not forget that Fiona has gone to many of these people to try and get them to control GMan, try and speak to him quietly, and they've had deafness. They've just not responded at all. In fact, if you look on my channel somewhere, I was having a conversation with Veckel, and he was saying that he doesn't watch her stuff. Well, how can he possibly say she doesn't preach the gospel and he hasn't watched her stuff? He's effectively making a claim without even knowing whether the claim is true. He's basically just believing whatever GMan lied about this week, kind of thing. It's bogus. Again, there's the bogusometer. So, this is the kind of bullshit that goes on. But with Shani, like I say, the cycle. So what will happen is she'll be rejected by them. They'll basically say, "Oh, you're a shitty Christian because you're not siding with us on our bullshit." Because it's not about truth. It's not about what's the Christian way. It's about you need to side with me, no matter what. And this is a reason. You look at what TrueEmpiricsm made his video the other day. Where he was saying, "I'm backing GMan, absolutely backing GMan." Now, sometimes I wonder if Veckel and Antonio and TrueEmpiricsm are actually friends of GMan's. Now, they may like GMan, but I wonder if they're allies rather than friends. As long as they're prepared to back him up in his bullshit, as long as they're prepared to play, take it for the team, as long as they're prepared to just stand by and support from the sides or just keep quiet and not confront him because they're kind of on the same team, then, he'll be allies with them. But if they dare to confront him on it, and I think there's, given the way that he's acted with Shani, as I mentioned in the cycle, they'll treat her like shit. And so what will happen is she'll want to fellowship with people. She's the kind of person that wants to talk to people. She needs, the internet or whatever as something to do. And, she'll come on and talk about what she wants to talk about or whatever. She'll want to have conversations with people. And, that's... so she'll want to fellowship with people. But the Christians that she kind of aligns with, they don't want to know her. So she'll end up chatting with atheists. But then what will happen is she'll get a kind of, a hook in the back of her head reminding her that these are the heathens. These are the, they're not Christians. They're not good people because they don't believe in, you're siding with kind of the enemy. Yes, she knows that most of us are good moral people, but really, if, she aligns with them, with their theology. And so what she'll do is she'll bite the bullet and kind of apologize to them, and then they'll embrace her back. And so, she'll get drawn back to them, and then they'll say something stupid, and then she'll end up being pushed out because she's called them out on it again. And again, it's that cycle. It just keeps going on and on and on. If you've seen it, you've probably seen it loads of times, and we kind of laugh about it, but, it's actually kind of tragic, really, And I used to see Jason Burns do the same thing. You know, that you could lead him along the trail, but you know, it's like his Bible was attached to him like a bungee cord. You know, that it gets stretched and stretched and stretched, and then suddenly just goes pow, and smacks him in the head and reminds him that he shouldn't be, you know, he shouldn't be going along a trail that he, you know, is not allowed to. And this is where um, the intellectual honesty lies. Now, me as an Aspie, just a rational thinker, I suppose. I can't just go with what someone else has said. I have to follow the trail. You know, if you there's a park near me and it's got trails going all the way through it. Now, if you've never been there before, and you may have looked it on Google Earth or something like that, and you think you know where it goes, but unfortunately it's got trees in it, so you can't really see through the trees to see where the trail is. So you think the trail starts there and it's going to end there. And so what happens is you go to the park and you walk down it and you find it comes out somewhere else. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. So what you do is you mentally redraw the map and you say, okay, I was expecting to go from A to B, but it actually came out at C. So, you know, I'm going to have to change my worldview of the park to incorporate that. So I do the same. This is how I operate. I basically say, okay, well, let's see where this trail goes. Let's follow the trail and see where it leads. And that's fine. And you know what? If that trail led to God, I would have to change my position accordingly. I haven't found a trail that leads to God. It usually goes somewhere else. It's like, well, hang on, no, it goes that way. It doesn't go that way. It doesn't go to God. It goes over here. So I can't follow that trail. Sorry, you know. Whereas the fundies, what they'll do is they'll sort of say, no, I don't like where the trail is going. So I'm now going to start carving my way through the trees, going to carve my way through the jungle with great effort in order to protect my belief. So I can pretend that the trail went to where I want it to go. You know, I can pretend that the trail goes to God, even though I can't really justify it. Someone gave an argument. No, that argument was rubbish because you're an idiot, because because you're horrible, because you're an atheist. You know, these are this is why we have the likes of GMan when he sort of makes a video saying that evolution isn't true because, and he doesn't even understand what the hell evolution is. He just doesn't understand it. It's not true because I don't understand things is basically his argument. And really what it comes down to, I don't like where that trail would lead, and so I'm not going to even entertain the idea of even walking the trail. He's effectively so distrustful that he won't allow himself to learn anything. You can't teach GMan anything he doesn't want to learn. I mean, yeah, we're all kind of guilty of that in a way, I suppose. But no, he can't even entertain the idea of going to school, as it were, of being taught something he doesn't already want to believe. You can't teach him anything because, as far as he's concerned, he has an answer and it's in a book. Well, the book doesn't tell you anything about how to, how to deal with something on the internet. It doesn't tell you about anything what to do with GMO foods. Doesn't tell you any of those things. And yet somehow, these things are negative things or whatever. I mean, I'm just randomly popping up ideas. So, it's just stupid. There is no point in trying to teach GMan anything. I mean, let's go on the Sokka went into his hangout to talk about morality. And GMan has the patience of an impatient goldfish. He didn't care about what Sokka had to say. So even if soccer put it in picture form, you know, G-Man wouldn't even want to listen, because what he wants to be true is atheists can't justify their morality, whereas I can because I've got the Bible, and yet seems to do completely the opposite of what the Bible says on the moral side of things. You know, that he will falsely accuse people, he will bear false witness, he will lie, you know, he will devise schemes. Um, you know, there's uh, there's a section that I found that I recently, which was Proverbs 6:16 to 19, where it's someone who devises schemes, breathes lies, sows discord amongst brothers or believers. That's G-Man all over. You know, so it's it's a waste of time even dealing with him, because Sokka went in there and it's like, okay, I can justify morality, and here's why. And unfortunately, he started using words that G-Man didn't understand, and so G-Man felt that he was being belittled somehow, and so therefore he had to be thrown out. He had to be talked over and thrown out, and that was that. Because G-Man couldn't allow Sokka to confuse him, because that would make him look, that would make him feel more, intellectually inferior. Well, he is intellectually inferior. He's an idiot. He's an idiot with a big mouth, and he'll assert things all day long, but actually have no evidence to support it. He's just got an opinion, an arbitrary one, you could say as well, because as much as he says he's got an objective morality, he uses his subjective opinion to which verses he's going to use to justify some moral thing that he wants to achieve today. Because the Bible is the big book of multiple choice, So, it's comical for me. I find it, hilarious, because effectively, I came into this community exploring, what makes people tick on the religion stuff. Well, G-Man is an awesome study, very interesting to look at, because it's like, how does a crazy lunatic manage to process things? An idiot. How does an idiot manage to process, a community where you've got intelligent people? How does he function around intelligent people? How does he function? He needs to belittle them, because he's kind of like the bully, the one that he has to think with his fists, because he can't think with his brain. He can't really rationalize things. So it's like, I know, I'm going to bully the person who seems to be intellectual, because that makes them feel better. Makes him feel better about himself. So the irony of G-Man saying that Christians will be persecuted while he's persecuting other people because he's not smart enough to keep up with the conversation, that tells so much. So yeah, it's interesting to to look at the community, really. Like I say, sadly, the conversations don't really happen. I mean, even Steve McRae, his GDC G plus group has basically turned to shit, because he didn't like being told that he was wrong about something. His ego is so fragile that he needed to protect that by booting people out of his little community all the time, while he's saying, oh, how it's growing. Well, yeah, it might be growing, but is it really worth being a part of? When effectively arguments are being stifled because they're saying things that he doesn't want to hear. How is that any different than GMan or Ronnie? It really isn't. The only difference is he's not complete arsehole about it. Whatever. I've got a lot of criticisms about Steve, but whatever. I mean, I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to walk away from that because it's not worth my time or my headache. And, to be honest, I like things that are, I'm okay with things when I can anticipate things. I kind of get thrown with curveballs. So, it's something that I can, expect to happen. A leads to B leads to C. If I can go with that, well, when you chuck random stuff in it, it's like, okay, I kind of get thrown by that, and I like the stability of knowing where the trail is. Suddenly finding that someone's gone and dumped a massive log in the way, and you've got to try and figure out a way around it. No, that's just too much work. So, but whatever. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. I had a bit on G+, but I can't remember. Just making sure. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yeah, I think we've come to a point where GMan is just going off the rails. And I posted a message on G+ a couple of months ago now, saying that everyone should just ignore the guy. Well, not ignore him, but the idea was that he rates his success on how many subscribers he's got. And so the idea was, okay, well, let's just unsubscribe from him. I don't unsubscribe to him at all. I've got bookmarks. So I said, look, okay, don't subscribe to him. Just bookmark his stuff. And so if you want to look, just go to bookmark, go watch his videos. I'm not suggesting don't watch his videos, or, just don't subscribe. Because suddenly it's like, most of the people seem to be people who are just watching him because he's a goof, because he's an idiot, and it's entertaining, rather than actually he has anything of actual value to contribute. Because again, GMan hasn't really got anything to contribute other than entertainment. Let's watch the lunatic say something stupid today. The fact that there is a soundboard is an illustration of this. What's the idiot gonna say today? So I don't know. The idea that I had was unsubscribe. Let's show him what his channel is made up of, because 90%, possibly even more, are made up of atheists laughing at him. That it's like, oh, I need to increase my channel. I know, I'll go on the Drunken Peasants, and they can laugh at me there. Because he's looked at as a moron, some entertaining idiot on the internet. And if you've ever watched the Drunken Peasants, they jump from video to video to video so they can laugh at some idiot losing his shit on the internet, or saying something spectacularly stupid. I mean, Jason Burns was on one of them, and it was, how dare you? He's like bubbling, just tears are flowing out, you have the audacity to, that kind of thing. You'll not win God, Sam Harris, you'll not win God, all that kind of stuff. They watch that stuff for entertaining because they think it's funny and stupid. And GMan plays into that. He's whoring himself out for the Drunken Peasants. It's hilarious. So, it's lols worthy. As Dreadnought will say, GMan is the lols cow. He just keeps providing milk every single day. And of course, Drag loves this. It's entertaining for him. He'll make videos about it, and what does it do? It inspires G-Man to say something else that's stupid, which gives him more stuff to talk about. And, you know, even if G-Man stopped doing that, Dreadnought wouldn't really care that much. You know, he can still look at old stuff, maybe. You know, because G-Man sort of made this thing about, oh, I'm going to do something, and then Dreadnought won't be able to, you know, won't be able to make videos about me. And the way he does that is to not be on the internet, which is silly, because of course G-Man has said, you know, well, you know, I'm not going to leave the internet. I'm going to keep being here because I'm going to keep, you know, challenging the atheists kind of thing. And it's like, really? I mean, you know, it reminds me of Blazing Saddles. There's a bit in the movie where the black sheriff is got people pointing guns at him, and he gets his own gun out and, you know, points his gun to his head and says, you know, put the gun down, or they, you know, he gets it, kind of thing. And then he takes himself hostage. He's like, help me, you know. And they're so confused by this, they put the gun down. He's like, you're going to get the man shit killed. And, you know, it's just, it's a con. But, you know, and again, it's like Jason Burns did the same thing. You know, there's the Jason Burns Archive channel, which only came into existence because Jason would, you know, make a claim lying about someone, and when people proved him he was lying, he'd then delete the video. Does this sound like Ronnie at all? You know, he would make a claim and then, you know, pretend it didn't exist by deleting it. Or he would get embarrassed and then would delete it or whatever, you know. And so he would then lie about what was said. Oh, I never said that. Okay. And so that's where the Jason Burns Archive channel appeared. And then Jason decided that he was, you know, fed up with the stress of, you know, being challenged on the internet by people who didn't believe like he did. And so he decided to leave. But even then, he was still kind of badgered, because when you type in Jason Burns, you find the stupid shit, you know, because of course, you know, he, and it's a bit like G-Man now, you know, he would make loads of videos challenging atheists. And then, you know, he got so upset by it, he deleted his channel and then blamed atheists. You know, oh, I lost thousands of videos because of the atheists. Really? You mean what he actually meant was, I got so upset that I deleted all the videos on my channel and then regretted it. But the silliness of it is that, you know, 30% of him was being a dickhead. Another one was plagiarizing someone else's, or, you know, so in other words, reading off something off the internet or something out of a book and calling it scholarship. Reading someone else's stuff is scholarship. You know, I wonder if I could just read out a novel with the camera off and then claim that I was writing a story, I'd written a story, you know, or maybe, you know, write a poem and, you know, plagiarize it off someone else and then claim it was, oh, that was Brett King. Sorry. So this is the same. G-Man is effectively, you know, trying to do the same thing, because as I jumped to step, when Jason Burns had this Jason Burns Archive channel, he was upset because it showed him being a dickhead, being, you know, being a complete shit on the internet. And so, and that was shadowing him. It was, you know, it was a shadow that was following him around, because when people typed up his name, they would find the stupid stuff with lots of views on it, because it's bloody entertaining. You know, watching someone just, you know, spiral into a abyss of their own making, you know, is kind of entertaining. It's a car crash. You can't help but look, you know. This is why you end up, you know, with the traffic slowing down when there's a car crash on one side of the road and the traffic ends up going really slow on the other side, is because everyone's just sort of slows down to have a little sneaky look and then accelerates away again afterwards. You know, rubbernecking, as it's called. So Jason Burns made a video threatening Thunderfoot, who pays no attention to him at all, You've got 24 hours to get this channel down. If you don't get this channel down, I'll make thousands of videos against atheism. That'll show you. You know, if you don't take this channel down, I'll make thousands of videos of me looking like, you know, behaving like a moron. That'll show you. That'll teach you. That'll stop you from making videos, you know, about me. This is what GMan's doing. He's basically saying, you know, that if you don't stop, I'll keep challenging you, which just provides more food for the likes of Dreadnought, or perhaps even myself, I suppose, here, you know. And GMan is sort of like, you know, oh, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop making content because that will stop Dreadnought from, you know, talking about me. Well, yeah, it might do, but you're not on the internet anymore. So effectively, you're a victim of your own making. You've been acting like a jackass, complaining that people have been treating you like a jackass, and now saying that you're not going to make any content so that they can't record you being a jackass. Well, congratulations on that idea. But of course, GMan has no stamina for such a thing. He couldn't not make videos. You know, he just hasn't got that ability. You know, the amount of times that he's decided he's going to take a break that's lasted for a day or two. You know, I mean, last week he said that he wasn't going to make any more videos. You know, the next 10 videos are not going to be talking about the atheists. 2 videos later, he's talking about Matt Dillahunty. You know, a couple of videos after that, he's talking about Dreadnought. So much for that idea. I think it was something like out of the next 10 videos, 6 of them were about atheists. He can't help himself. He can't pull himself out of this thing. You know, again, it's a spiral of, you know, of his own making. It's just going, you know, I mean, a part of me is expecting him to, you know, make a video where he's got ketchup on himself and saying, oh, look, the atheist did this. You know, I mean, unfortunately, as I was saying towards the start, you know, this Gary Widgray character or characters have given actual ketchup, you know, or, you know, they've created an idea for him so he can't sort of pretend he's a victim. He can now say that he's a victim. But again, as I said, he's a victim of his own making. It's not, you know, it's not like this just came out of the blue. You know, it's all his fault. He is 100% to blame for his problems. He's the one that put his name out there. He's the one that walked outside of his of the business where he worked. I don't know, has he got fired yet? I don't know. You know, he did that. He's the one that's walked around his neighborhood. And, you know, anybody with Google Earth and Street View can figure it out. You know, he said where he lives. So, you know, but the problem is that when you make yourself an enemy of people, you know, and don't love your enemies as you love yourself by, you know, not preaching the God Bible and do what it says, do the opposite of what it says. When you do that, there's going to be backlash. And then he says that the backlash is just because he's a Christian. No, it's not. Because you're a fucking asshole. So, like I say, Ronnie and Antonio, the line's been drawn now. The line's been drawn because GMan is getting what he deserved. You know, that he's getting a backlash of his own making. You know, I don't mean that he deserves to have people, you know, trying to, you know, call his work and stuff like that. He could have done something about that. Hello? There you go. That would have been easy. But GMan couldn't do that. He had to shut the shop down. We're closed. Because someone on the internet decided to take it to his real life, which they shouldn't have done, in my opinion. They shouldn't have done that, but they did. And um, if he loses his job, it's because it's his own fault. It's not my fault. It's not Hogtie's fault. It's not Fiona's fault. It's not even TrueEmpiricsm Antonio's fault. It's GMan's fault. GMan set up the dominoes. He set up the dominoes and they arranged them. And then all it took was someone who decided, fuck that guy. I'm just going to flick this one little domino. And the whole thing goes tumbling down. He set up the dominoes of hate and someone went and flicked it. All it took was one little thing to do, and now he's in the situation where he is now. It's stupid, but you can't help but look. You can't help but look. It's a shame because I rather like having the conversation. I think I could have a nice conversation with Veckel. I think he's a decent enough guy. I think he's saddled with terrible animosity for people who don't believe like he does. But like I say, when you get in a hangout with him, you can have a laugh with him. And I think someone like Veckel, I think I could have a good friendly relationship if we just didn't talk about religion. I really do. I bet there's plenty of things that we have in common. I mean, when I'd hang out with him, because I actually spoke to him one time, and I said, "Tell me something. What the hell was that thing with the belt around your head?" And he's like, "Oh, that thing. I was just making fun of the Black Hebrew Israelites. They do stuff like that." And of course, everybody had been making fun of him, thinking that this is his fashion style, and it wasn't. It was just trolling. He was making fun. It was a parody. And you saw him sort of dancing, not terribly well, but he was dancing in New York and stuff like that. I mean, he's kind of lighthearted in that way. He doesn't take things terribly serious in certain elements, but in other ones he does. And so I think that you get off that subject, then perhaps. And I used to think the same about Jason Burns. I thought, what? I bet if we just went to the pub and talked about something other than religion, we might have an interesting conversation. But of course, he couldn't do that. He couldn't possibly do that. And GMan is the same. GMan has the same mentality there. You look at they had the gathering in New York. And it's like, okay, well, he was being a bit egotistical with this running race and stuff like that. But okay, whatever. That's a piece of his character. He's an egotist. And again, as I kind of mentioned, like the bullying kind of thing, it's like, well, I may not be intellectually as smart as you, but I've run a marathon and I can run fast and things like that. Effectively, it's like, he's like the athlete. Not very smart athlete. It didn't really matter that he wasn't really smart. He could run fast, or he could wrestle well, or he could, it was a good boxer or whatever. He could use his body rather than his brain. Whereas when he's mixed with people who use their brains, then he's out of his element. He's, so he needs to find a way to impress people, and that was his way. I think we can understand that kind of thing. But but when it came to meeting up, we've heard him say something along the lines of, I don't trust people on the internet, because when it's, I personally, I can't do this. I generally get to know people. There's obviously sort of, there's ranking So the people that I'm closest to, I know a lot more about them than I do about, than other people. So, I know maybe what they do for a job or what they like to do, away from this stuff. Maybe they like sports, or maybe they like, riding a bike, or model trains in my case, playing war games. I have one of my best relationships, someone not in this community. We both do model railways. We both like aircraft, and so the reason that we met in the first place, yes, that's an important part, but the rest of the other parts means that we have a deeper relationship. And this is why I've got a relationship with people like D and Fiona and 13 Heathens, and um, things like that. So we get to know each other personally. Well, when GMan met them in real life, he suddenly couldn't just accept them as faceless entities on a computer screen. They were now actual people with emotions and feelings, and he'd had a laugh with them, and they'd had some fun, and they'd gone on, I don't know, did whatever they did. They went to a museum, and and so on. So it was a good thing. But then what happens is he acts like a jackass, and it's like, oh, I met these people, and they were real people. Well, now I need to find an excuse to be a shit to them. So now he needs to, do this whole "they stole my phone," as opposed to he dropped his phone, or he put it down and it got mixed, and someone picked it up and thought it was someone else's, and they put it on with the rest of the phones, whatever it was. I don't know the exact story, but I do know it was, it was just a misunderstanding. But no, GMan has to twist it and turn it into a deliberate evil intent, because that's the person he is. And it reminds me of something that Hogtie said years ago now. He was talking about Arcane at the time, and he said that people who lie all the time, they assume everybody else is a liar just like they are, and they treat everybody else under the same, with the same kind of rule set. They assume that everybody else lies. And so it's so much easier to just think, oh, well, they're lying, because that's what they do as a matter of course. So, it's terribly easy to just dismiss things. I can't just dismiss that because GMan is on the wrong team, so to speak, that people phoning up his job and getting food delivered to him, and maybe screwing over some company that had to make the food and deliver the food. I can't just dismiss that as, well, he deserved it because he's an arsehole. Well, the people who made the food didn't deserve it. His boss didn't deserve to maybe lose, wages as a result of it. Sorry, lose customers as a result of it. A disruption in the, in the workplace. He didn't need that. If GMan does or has been fired, then he doesn't deserve to have to try and find someone else to fill the, his shoes, which shouldn't be too hard. So he doesn't need that disruption. So I don't know. I think I'm going to end this now, but because I think I've said a lot and rambled a lot. But yeah, I think I've I think I've got it right. So I'll probably remember something that I didn't say. The last hangout that I made, I meant to say this, that, and the other, and there's say that? Oh well, happens. So whatever. But yeah, short version is the conversation's over because it's been over for a long time. Ronnie and Veckel and GMan and Antonio and several of the other ones, they aren't interested in the conversation. And to be honest, sometimes the drama diverts from things that could be said. One of the conversations that was going to happen before Steve kiboshed it, Fiona was going to have a hangout about abortion from a female perspective. All the people in the hangout were going to be women because there's a surreal thing when you end up with a discussion about abortion, and all the way down the bottom you've got boxes of men who will never have to face the idea of carrying this thing inside them and having to make that decision. So it's like, yeah, it's that's a conversation that should be said, it should be heard, but that got left behind. There are more science discussions that should be made, some more philosophical discussions that should be had, and unfortunately the drama has kind of diverted that away. Do you think we could start having those again? I enjoy those conversations, even though I'm not versed in some of them. It's at least interesting to be able, even if they don't get as many views, because I don't know. I wonder how many people, if Dreadnought will have a sciencey video on his channel, and it won't get many views, whereas the one where he's having a go at GMan, that will get loads of views. That shows that most people enjoy the drama because it's entertaining, and I agree, it is entertaining. I get kind of bored with it, you may notice, you may not, but I go silent for days. I don't go on G+ for days because it's very easy to, as I mentioned, getting a bit fat. It's very easy to just sit here all day and get nothing done and just go on G+, you just go through hundreds of G+ things and you leave replies and you end up with a little debate going between a couple of people. Maybe you turn into Barney and Nate talking about the definition of atheism again. Stuff like that. But it's easy to lose a day doing that. I got railway modeling I want to get done. I haven't done any for weeks. Why not? I need to stop letting this divert me quite so much. Even if I just listen to a Dreadnought hangout while I'm doing that, maybe I should play some video games a bit less. Maybe not every single night. Maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, because it's easy to lose your time from that. So, maybe I just need to unplug a little bit, just to keep things fresh, keep make sure other things happen. I mean, the good thing is that with the turbo trainer, which is actually on the ground just behind me, because this isn't a wall behind me. This is the middle of the room. The wall's there behind my camera and monitor. The nice thing about having the turbo trainer is I can just wheel my bike down the hallway, clip it on, and then sit here and ride while I'm watching a hangout. So it's and actually when I say the conversation's over, that's not quite true. Jim W and Negotiation to P had a good conversation the other day, and look what happened. A Christian and a non-believer and an atheist, they had a good discussion. Who'd have thought that could happen? It can happen. And the only reason why this happens is because two people can have differing opinions and still walk away enjoying the conversation they had. Me and Soccer last night, we chatted for a couple of hours. You know, we talked about Elite Dangerous, but we also talked about about gender, you know, transgender type stuff. You know, and you know, we walked away still disagreeing with our, you know, with each other, you know, on the core element that we disagreed on, but we had a good conversation. You know, we're still buddies. We walked away and we said, yeah, it was a good conversation. Thanks for that. Yep. Good night. Take care. You too. Bye. And that was it. We went, you know. And next week we'll have another conversation about something or other, and that'll be great. You know, this is what happens when people can have a, you know, can talk to each other, even if they disagree on an issue, even if they believe different things. You know, it's not about the disagreement. It's about whether someone can be an arsehole while having a disagreement. If someone's an arsehole and having a disagreement, then as entertaining as that may be, it doesn't bear any fruit. It's a fruitless task. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anyone's mind. It becomes egos at noon. You know, it's high noon with egos instead of, you know, pistols. You know, that's a waste of time. But having a good conversation about something and walking away and be able to say, I enjoyed that conversation. I'm still not convinced of their position, but it was still a good conversation. Made me think, you know. And I've done that because I'm prepared to rethink my position. As much as it's hard for people, hard for us, all of us, I think, to really shift. There are times when we do. You know, there are times when I've had to sort of say, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to have to change my position on that because, perfect example, I was sort of a 9/11 truther at one point. I was never, you know, the government was in on it kind of stuff. The one that I had was Flight 93. That was the one that crashed in the ground at Shanksville. And I thought it was shot down by a US Air Force F-16 or F-15 or something. And the reason was because I saw a news report saying that there was debris that was found 6.5 miles away. And I thought, okay, when a plane crashes into the ground, the debris is in a small pattern. When a plane is shot down, it's like an umbrella. It scatters over a wider area. And when it's really high, Pan Am Flight 103, that was blown up by a terrorist bomb in 1989, I think it was. That was over 100 miles because it was 3.5 miles up at the time. The wind carried it. Some bits dropped like that. Other bits, lighter bits, got thrown around. And what happened was I didn't just say, there you go, gotcha, you know, because the way I considered it was the plane had been shot down over the, because it was the last one. You know, 3 planes had already hit buildings. 2 had hit the World Trade Center. Another one had hit the Pentagon. There's this other rogue plane out there. And so the government basically, you know, this was what my conspiracy was at the time. The government basically made a really tough decision. They said, okay, what do? We can either let it crash into something else. It could crash into the White House. It could crash into the Senate building. It could land on a mall. It could, you know, it could do all sorts of, you know, could land on a housing estate. It could do all sorts of things. Well, you know, do we allow it to crash into a, you know, a big populated area like a city center, or do we shoot it down and we lose, you know, 56 people, however many people are on the plane? I can't remember the number offhand. Okay, so it's like, which is the best bad thing to do? which is the lesser of two evils, effectively. And they decided to shoot it down. And then what happened was the reports came in that the passengers were going to revolt. And, what they did was they lied and they said that, the passengers took control and they crashed the plane. Or sorry, they tried to take control and the terrorist pilots went and crashed it into the ground instead. They went down as heroes. Better them to go down heroes as us making a horrible, terrible decision and screwing them over. That'll make us look bad. So that was what my opinion was at the time. And when I investigated it, what I discovered is that the debris that had been found 6.5 miles away wasn't 6.5 miles away at all. Just to the east, there was a lake. And what had happened was the bits of debris that were found have been like bits of foam and bits of paper and things like that, the insulation. And what had happened was that the fireball had basically blown it up into the air, and it had been windy in the direction of the lake, and it had landed in the lake. And then some people who lived on the opposite side of the lake found it. And so the journalist who went to look at it, she used MapQuest to find out from where it was to where they were. And she'd had to drive all the way around the lake to get to it. And that was 6.5 miles. So the distance was actually about a mile or so. But, as the crow flies, but to get there, she'd had to drive a long way away. And so that was the number that was given. So what happened was I had to sort of redraw, the trail. I had to say, okay, the trail doesn't go to where I thought it went after all. I followed the trail to see where it goes, and it leads to this conclusion, which is not a conspiracy in the end. So, like I say, we don't, I'm not just a sucker for just believing the government story or whatever. I've investigated those things. Before I joined this community, if you go looking for 9/11 videos from like 8 to 10 years ago, I'm all over them. You'll see my comments all over the place, and just calling bullshit out when I smell it, as I mentioned before. I got a good bogusometer. And my absolute favorite one, I know I'm random, rumbling here, but my absolute favorite 9/11 conspiracy theory was so there's the BBC reported that the third building, World Trade Center 7, had collapsed about 15 minutes or so before it actually did. So you got Jane Stanley, and also the newsreader in London says that third building is collapsed. It was going to collapse, and it has. And then off to Jane Stanley in New York, and so there she is, and she's she's out in Times Square, and over her shoulder she's got this the smoke coming off where World Trade Center, the Twin Towers were, and and she's the first thing she says is details are sketchy, but we've heard that there's that there's a third building that's collapsed since the Solomon Brothers building, and yada 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 yada. And she talks about the confusion of the day and stuff like that. Well, details are sketchy is 24-hour newspeak for we've got an unconfirmed story, we're waiting for for it to be confirmed, and it was clarified later on. Now, apparently what happened was Reuters, the news agency, they reported out that it had collapsed, where the fire brigade were actually saying that it was going to collapse. Probably something like, a busy Reuters office is absolutely jam-packed with news coming in. And at one point, they said there were 20 planes that were hijacked, during the day, because I was watching it live. They just weren't listening to the radio because they weren't expecting to be called. And gradually they responded, and then they found that the 4 planes, Anyway, so they got the Reuters news day desk is going to be absolutely jam-packed. It'd be like a canteen, where you've got loads of people talking and it gets louder and louder and louder as everybody else is loud, so you have to speak louder and they speak louder, and next thing you know, everyone's loud. And then when you were at school, like, teacher goes shh, and everyone would go like quiet, and it would gradually get louder and louder and louder over time again. So chances are that someone says building number 7's coming down, and someone overhears and said building 7's come down. Yeah, off it goes into the ether of the internet, and suddenly you got news groups all over the place saying that a third building has collapsed when it was going to collapse. So what happens is there's Jane Stanley, and over her shoulder you can see the building still there. That's the prelude to it. So someone made a video saying that the reason the BBC released it an hour early, because their argument was the BBC announced it too early. They were supposed to tell it an hour later. So the reason why the BBC announced it too early, was because the clock change. So summertime to wintertime kind of thing. And so I left a reply saying, bit of a problem. The clocks change in October. And so the next day I get up and there's a reply, because this is like 3 days. And so there's a reply insisting that it was about the clock change. And I was snarky with them. I said, it's a nice conspiracy, but only 2 problems. 1, the clocks change in October. And 2, the clocks change in October. Now, I know that strictly speaking, there's only 1 problem, but I thought it was such a big problem it was worth mentioning twice. The following day, I wake up and there's a reply, and it's saying that the reason why they announced it too early was because they're using the European time. So the BBC at 0 hours GMT, so because bear in mind that GMT, Britain time is like the center of the world, so to speak. London is the center of the world in terms of the clocks. So everything is either plus London time or minus London time. So for example, right now, New York, East Coast is -5 hours. European time is +1 hours. Okay. So the BBC at the center of the world at, GMT, were using European time to speak to their New York, +1 hours, to speak to their New York office at -5 hours in a room full of clocks. Because London Television Centre, the newsroom, was a circular room. So this isn't the one where they do the person, with the microphone, or, the person in front of the camera. That's not the studio. I'm talking about the news centre where all the information is coming in from around the world, and where they're collating the information to be able to put the news on later that day, and 24-hour news as well, of course. So, so what happened was that room was a circular room, and all the way around it were clocks in the different time zones. So if you want to know what time it is in China, you look to your right and you see what time it is in China, because despite being a really wide country, there's only 1 clock change. It can be dark at one part of China and light in another one, and it'll still be the same time. Weird fact for you. But if you want to know what time it is in Tokyo, or what time it is in Singapore, or what time it is in Australia, or what time it is in Delhi, you just look at the different places. You just search around for, India, Delhi, or whatever, and you'll find, and that'll tell you what time it is there. I don't envy the person who's got to change the clocks twice a year. And then, if they want to know what time it is in New York, they can look to their left and they can see that it's, that it's, 11 o'clock, 11:33 now. And they can look further on and look at it's -8 hours. So it's that time in Los Angeles, and so on. So, this is how the system works. So the BBC at 0 hours GMT will use European time at +1 hours to talk to their New York office at -5 hours in a room full of clocks. And it basically, I realized, and it goes the same way for the radical evangelical types, never let the truth get in the way of a good conspiracy. Never let facts get in the way of a belief system that needs to be protected at all costs. Because with this 9/11 truther guy, the truth didn't matter to him. Despite the truther name, the truth doesn't matter. They only are interested in protecting the truth that they already want to believe. And so they've decided And no matter, nothing you say can convince them that they're wrong about this. And religion is largely the same. You know, that, you know, or the, you know, the radical evangelical types, you know, the GMans of the world, Veckel, you know, Ronnie, you know, it's particularly Ronnie. Yeah, in fact, I think Ronnie would be a perfect example of this. You know, it doesn't matter how much you can explain something that, you know, his argument on intelligent design biology is wrong. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care. He's already decided what the truth is for himself, and nothing you or I could say could convince him otherwise. So you might as well not even bother. Well, it doesn't matter. You can't bother anyway because he's got you blocked, because he needs to protect that belief. He needs to protect his little paradigm in his head. And so his version, you know, all you have to remember, think about the block thing where you know, I mean, I can't even leave a comment under a TrueEmpiricsm video. Me, who doesn't challenge him on biology, can only challenge him on his attitude, or you know, maybe challenge him on maybe Bible stuff or whatever. Okay, no, I am blocked from leaving any comments. If I leave a comment, zoom, it disappears, gone, just gone, and it won't come back. You know, it'll just disappear. I could actually demonstrate it now if I wanted to. I could go to his channel. I could leave a comment under his latest video, just, you know, saying whatever, and then I can hit refresh. It'll be gone. It'll be gone. That's the way it is. Because, like I say, he needs to protect his audience. And the irony of it is, most of his audience are atheists and, you know, people who understand biology. So people who can bring it. And you'll hear the confession. He will confess it every now and again. He'll say something like, you know, I'm not going to let you, you know, what was that? I think I wrote it down. You know, yeah, you don't get to say that. You know, you don't get to say that on my channel. You know, you don't. I'm not going to let my audience see that. You know, this is why he'll make a video. Someone will go in, they'll embarrass him by, you know, showing that they know what they're talking about and they can see through his nonsense. And it's like, oh shit, I had someone on there that could prove me wrong. That hangout will be deleted. It will be gone. You know, I mean, comically, there's actually been a couple of Bring It evolutionists that have got the same number, because of course he just added one to the last video that he did, but unfortunately the previous one he had was deleted, so he's got two 24s, or, you know, he had two 24s, one of them disappeared because someone went in and demonstrated he wasn't right, you know, and he couldn't have that. He couldn't have someone showing that, you know, he didn't know something, because he needs to be that, you know, he needs to be the you know, the biology guru for the fundies, you know, and, you know, have that respected thing, you know, that TrueEmpiricsm is scientific advisor. You know, it's hilarious to me. I find that really quite funny. So, you know, again, it all comes down to the block button, the list of people that are blocked. I mean, Sean Cale said, how many people have you got blocked? And I think he said something like 400 people he has blocked. I bet probably about 20 of them are actual trolls and idiots, and the rest of them are all evolutionists that he needs to block so that they can't come in and embarrass him. You know, he needs them to be blocked. And that whole idea is the exact equivalent. The block button is the la 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 la. I'm going to pretend that you don't exist, that you haven't, you know, you can't come on and tell me I'm wrong, because, you know, I can't hear you, and my audience can't hear you because I've got you blocked. That is exactly what he does. Exactly what he does. You know, and I bet if Fiona went and created a sock account and went on and said, "You're wrong about this," she would be gone, and that account would be blocked as well, because he knows that she knows what she's talking about. You know, there's an hilarious conversation when again, I don't know much about biology, but she went in there and she was talking about third base wobble, and you know, I ended up shouting at my monitor saying, "For crying out loud, I understand this. I don't know shit about science, but I get this. Why don't you?" It's astounding, you know. And you know, we've got that weird ramble about, you know, the solipsism thing, and it's just a big pile of jargon. It's like, what does that even mean? It's hilarious because, like I say, he's just bamboozles people with big words and speaks quickly because he thinks that that's what intelligent people do. People are intelligent, use big words that most people don't understand, and they talk quickly, because if you talk quickly, that means that you know that you have mastered it. You know, that you don't really need to think about it. You can just spew this stuff out because, you know, like rote. You can just produce it because you understand it. And I can do this on model railway stuff. I absolutely can. I can talk for hours and hours and hours about coaches or wagons or, you know, whatever. You know, I got a head full of knowledge for these things. It's my special subject. Or aircraft. You know, I know so much about these subjects. I don't get to talk about them very much because it bores most people to tears. But I'm actually respected in the model railway world. I've written magazine articles. You know, I have people that, like, you know, are impressed with the knowledge that I have. So, you know, it's like ironically, for many, there's a YouTube group, but for many people, I've sort of become a bit of a guru. It's like, there doesn't seem to be anything about modern trains that guy doesn't seem to know. Okay, whatever. It's mainly experience. It's something that I love, and obviously I've got a head for it. So, you know, and of course, being Aspies tend to have a fixed focus interest. Trains is mine, and aircraft for that, because my parents were in the Air Force. I grew up around planes. That was what I like. So as a result, that was my first big interest. I used to use like dinosaurs and all sorts of other things, but whatever. So, you know, people who know what they're talking about can just vomit out a stream of, you know, knowledge. Vomit is probably not the best word, but, you know, they can just produce stuff. Well, Ronnie does the idiot's version of that. He uses big words and a load of jargon, which, you know, from what I can tell from the people who do know this subject, like Fiona and Sam and, you know, CRISPR and, you know, RSC or whoever, you know, they do understand these subjects, and so they can smell the bullshit. And so they just, yeah, he's talking rubbish about that, and they'll explain why. And of course, I don't understand the why because it's not a subject that I'm terribly knowledgeable about. And I'm open about that, because that's the difference between someone with intellectually honest. You know, if someone who is intellectually honest will be open enough to not pull the guile, because that's what the likes of GMan and TrueEmpiricsm do. They replace actual knowledge with guile. That if they talk too much and make it sound impressive enough, then the people who don't know it from their side will be convinced that they know what they're talking about. You know, I could probably, you know, find a subject. I don't know much about steam trains, okay, but I know enough about trains. And so I think that I could probably have, you know, just spew out 10 minutes worth of jargon about trains and make it, you know, talk about steam trains. And even though I don't know much about them, I have a general idea, but that's about it. I could probably spew out 10 minutes worth of stuff and get half of it wrong, maybe even 2/3 of it wrong. I mean, other than it being a train and, the coaches that it pulls and stuff like that. But, the inner workings of it, where the train ran, how old it was, what years it ran, all that kind of stuff. I'd probably get it all wrong. But I'm smart enough to be able to, talk enough about it quickly enough that people who have no idea what I'm talking about will be convinced that I know what I'm talking about. And it's only when you come across someone who does know about steam trains that they would be able to say, hang on, you've got that wrong. And you got that wrong, and you got that wrong, and that wrong, and that wrong, and that wrong, and it was built that year, and it ran on that line, and it did that, and it did that, and it was preserved in so and so, and then it ran on that, and it went to, and so on. They know the subject matter, so they can call me on it. And now I end up looking like an idiot because I'm trying to talk about something with authority and don't actually have the knowledge to back it up. And that's what happens with Ronnie. And unfortunately, GMan is a sucker for it. He thinks that because Ronnie makes it sound convincing, Ronnie's right, because Ronnie's on the correct team. He's on my team. So therefore, he's the guru on this. Matt Slick does the same thing. So what happens is he suckered into it, and therefore, anybody who can demonstrate that TrueEmpiricsm doesn't know what he's talking about, they must be blocked. They must be subdued so that they can't do it. And the reason why he won't come into Hangouts with, the likes of Fiona, where he's not in control, he won't come into Hangouts like that, is because he knows that they can control the volume. Think about it. You go into his channel, starts talking about it, and they'll control the volume, and next thing you know, it breaks. Suddenly they can't hear him, but the person can talk, and they can't seem to do anything about it. We've seen that happen a few times because they're so busy trying to control it that they go and break it. They break the algorithm that make how it works or whatever, and so you'd have to refresh or restart something. So they're so intent in trying to silence someone that they're unable to see beyond that. So yeah. Okay, Shadow. Yeah, I've been talking to myself for 2 hours, you're right. Thank you everybody for watching. I rambled. I do that. So thanks for sticking with me. I've got 9 people watching. I had quite a few before, about a dozen or two. Also something, I don't know. Whatever. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good night. Bye-bye, everybody.